You know, on Sundays, we're in this series called Miracle Signs and Wonders, and we're going through the 7 miracles of John, and it's been incredible so far. My dad, Pastor Durso, spoke about water into wine, and then we had Pastor Monique talk about the healing of the official son, and I'm excited. Next 5 miracles that are coming up, I think they're going to be incredible, and put us in a place where we go, man, if for them, God could do it for us. And so tonight, I'm not going to be in the book of John, but I am still going to, the theme with miracle signs and wonders. And we're going to talk about miracles. If you have your Bibles, you could get there ahead of me. I'm not going to get there yet, but you could open up to Mark chapter 7. And my life, I've had the incredible privilege and blessing. Thank you. Funny because I'm talking about hearing tonight, so that was all part of the sermon, guys. It's all part of the sermon. And so I've had the privilege of jumping on some planes in my life, and whenever I get to the airport, I ask the ticket agent, I said, hey, can I have a exit row seat? Obviously, I'm incredibly tall and need the extra leg room. Why are you laughing? When you're sitting there, the flight attendants will come over, especially if you're flying international, and they want to know if you're going to be available to assist in an emergency or in case of evacuation. So they'll ask you some questions, and they ask you, one of the questions, if you speak English or you speak the language of wherever you're going. I lived in Peru, so I'd normally be going to Peru, so they'd say, do you speak English or do you speak Spanish? And the reason for it was, in case of an emergency, there was going to be some instructions that were going to be given over the loudspeaker by the pilot, and there was some information in the pamphlet in the seat pocket in front of you, and if you could not understand what you were hearing or understand what you were reading, that you couldn't assist in the evacuation. The instructions were to save not only your life, but everybody around you. So you had to not only hear or be able to read, but you had to understand what you were hearing and reading. James tells us that we're not only to be hearers, input, but doers, output. All throughout the Bible, healing and understanding are a package deal so that we can apply these instructions and live them out. Our output hinges and is contingent on our input. Matthew 13, Juan spoke about it during offering on Sunday. Jesus tells this parable of the seed and the sower, and he says, though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. Package deal. In the parable, Jesus talks about 4 scenarios of seeds being sown, one yielding fruit and the other 3 yielding nothing. The first scenario, the seed falls on bad soil and the birds come and eat it. And the 4th and last scenario, the seed falls on good soil and produces fruit. Now, when Jesus is actually teaching the meaning of these parables, he says, when he goes to explain the first scenario, this is verse 19, he says, when anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart, hence produces nothing, no input, no output. The 4th or last scenario is explained in verse 23. It says, but the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. Good input, good output. Hearing to understand, to do. Like I said, I lived in Peru, and one of my friends was in the Navy, and he worked in the submarine. And one time he said, hey, why don't you come and see my workspace? And took me into the submarine, and we went inside, and we actually went into the room where he would work. And he closed this door, and it had this huge vacuum seal on the door, so that none of the noise from outside could get inside, because he was going to sit there, and then he was going to put his noise-canceling headphones on to drown out any other noise that was possibly in the room, even his breathing, so that he could listen. Beep, 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 beep. He was listening for something specific. He knew what he was listening for. He invested time listening. and being able to differentiate from the beeps. He'd sit there for hours in silence, listening to interpret, listening to understand if the beep was either an enemy sub or a crab walking along the ocean floor. And man, so many Christians, we go through life with so much noise all around us, all the time, and it becomes almost normal to us. We can't tell the noises apart. We can't tell what's for us and what's against us, what's real and what's not. We don't dedicate the time alone with God, like what we were doing tonight, and really pay attention. It's like we haven't heard from God in so long that we don't even know what to listen for anymore. We want everyone else to tell us what God's will is for our life, and we're just saying, just talk to him. Just sit there. Just listen, just sit in his presence, just like we were doing a moment ago, and we're going to get back to. He calls himself the Word. He clearly wants to communicate. But we've got all this background noise all the time. Parents, you know, in the car, at home, in the gym, there's music, there's cell phones, there's social media, there's Candy Crush games, there's the news going on, there's alarm clocks, there's timers on the stove going off. Sometimes the noises in our head, about the past and insecurities and bad thoughts and all these distractions, or what could have been, it's just all the time, and it's so loud. Did you know that excessive noise is the cause of approximately half of all cases of hearing loss? We can't clearly hear, and so we don't know what to do. And I'm saying, man, get rid of the noise. When you want to hear, right, what do? When you want to have clear input, you focus, you lean in, right? You take your cell phone in and you plug the other ear up and you lean in, you focus. You get away from all the other noise. You get to a quiet place. You shush everybody around you. You're like, hey, I got to focus. I got to lean in. I want to hear to understand so I can follow the instructions of whatever I'm listening to. Same how we learn in school. By speaking? No. By listening to understand so we can apply. You got to turn some things off to focus. You have to eliminate other sounds if you really, truly want to hear and understand good input that will lead to good output. He wants to talk to you. He wants to give you directions. It's like a GPS. Go left, go right, recalculating. Input, output. Communication is key to any good relationship, and his greatest desire is to have an intimate relationship with us. You know, it said the most important part of prayer is not what we're saying to God, but what God says to us. And so we're so used to speaking all the time, we don't even know how to listen. It's not he who has a mouth, let him speak. It's he who has an ear, let him hear. And we speak too much and we hear too little, and our speaking is affected by our hearing. So because we're not hearing correctly, we aren't saying the right things and we're not doing the right things. And it even affects the way we believe. Faith comes by speaking? No. Faith comes by hearing. It affects the way we live. Matthew 4:4 says, man does not live on bread alone, but man lives, output, by every word, input, that comes from the mouth of God. But everything's been so loud for so long. Some of us have hearing damage. And we're screaming at God like, answer me already. Speak to me already. And yet, he's been speaking this whole time. Matthew 7:31-37. The title says, Jesus heals a deaf and mute man. Same man. Verse 31 says, then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. After he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his finger into the man's ears, then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said, Ephatha, which means be opened. At this, the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. I love that this story starts off with some people bringing someone to Jesus. Whoever these people were knew something about Jesus. They knew he had the power to heal. They knew that this man had an issue and knew that Jesus was the solution. They knew that absolutely nothing else could save this man from his situation, his condition, and they had to get him to Jesus. And it says these people begged Jesus. Begged Jesus to do something about the situation. I love that word. They begged Jesus. They asked passionately and relentlessly. They were determined and desperate. They were insistent and persistent. They were not letting this opportunity pass them by. They were confident, like we were just singing, that the healing touch that this man needed stood right in front of them. Now, in order for them to beg him, they had to get in within speaking distance of him. And so there's this massive crowd. Like literally the chapter before is when Jesus feeds the 5,000. So there's obviously crowds around Jesus. He's got some followers, at least those that are looking for leftovers. And they had to push through a thick crowd with this man that's deaf and mute. And maybe he didn't even know why they were dragging him along. But they fight through the crowd, through the obstacles, through the things in their way to get a situation to Jesus. And they finally get to Jesus and they beg Jesus for what? To place his hands on him. They didn't get specific with Jesus or tell him what the problem was or what the situation was or what to heal. They just begged for his touch. These guys knew something. And the guy that was brought to Jesus, a man who was deaf, input, a man who couldn't speak, output. Almost anyone that has hearing issues has speech issues unless they go through therapy, because he couldn't hear the sounds of speech. He couldn't create the sounds of speech. A man that needed help, a man that did not have a voice, a man that could not speak up for himself. His ability to articulate a request required a need of an outside voice. This is a man that's been unable to be understood his whole life, most likely since birth. A man that probably couldn't hear all the commotion about Jesus and all the miracles, all the stories about all the miracles about Jesus, unless someone interpreted for him, like our incredible team up there, Gloria, Maria, and the rest of the team. And can we give it up for our deaf ministry? They begged Jesus, Jesus, would you just touch this man? And Jesus responds. And first he moves in silence. I love this. Jesus takes the man aside, away from the crowd. I mean, why? He could have just thought it, said it, blinked it, whatever. He says, come with me. Get alone with me. I mean, it was a big crowd. It could have been a big believe moment for everybody. He goes, hold on, wait a minute. You who you've been in silence, you've been left out, you've been pushed away for so long, man. I want you to come. Nobody's paid attention to you for so long. Come here, I want to pay some attention to you. I want to get alone with you. I want some time with you. I want an intimate moment with you. So Jesus takes this man aside and he does some weird stuff. He sticks a finger in his ear and he puts some spit on the guy's tongue. Imagine if the guy was like, Jesus, I'm not comfortable with what you're doing here. I mean, I don't know about you, but I never liked it when my mom would spit to wipe away the milk-stained mustache that I had on my lip. I'm like, Mom, I would rather this milk curdle than your spit press into my pores. Why the spit? Jesus actually does 3 spitting miracles. 3 miracles involving spit. And a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts about what they were. We know that spitting is usually a sign of disrespect. Well, some say Jesus was insulting the sickness. Jesus spoke to Peter's mother-in-law's fever, and that means that sickness could hear, and if sickness could hear, sickness could be insulted. And some say that he was insulting the sickness. Some say that he was baptizing him. Some say that he was putting his DNA in him. I don't know what it was about. Here's what I know. Sometimes Jesus does some things that I don't get, and he performs miracles in ways that I don't understand, and I might not be comfortable with. Oh, but I'm going to trust him because I've seen that he did it before, and I know he can do it again. So Jesus, however you want to do it, I'm with it. So fingers and ears, spit on tongue, addressing the problems, deaf and mute, letting the man know he knows exactly where the issues lie. Comforting this man. This man must have been terrified. What in the world is going on? And then Jesus looks up, almost like this divine connection with heaven, and then he sighs. He sighs, almost like this divine connection with what we're all going through on this journey called life. And Jesus says, be opened. And it says the man's ears were opened and his tongue was loosened. And immediately the man begins to speak plainly. Immediate output. Be opened. Man's ears are opened, tongue's loosened, and immediately the guy begins to speak plainly. So let's follow. Man came to Jesus and asked him for something. There's prayer. Jesus responds, does it not as expected? There's our miracle. Then opened and loosened, and my mind starts to run. Prayer, response, opened, loosened. Prayer, miracles, opened, loosened. Prayer, response, open, loosened. Prayer, response, open, loosened. And I start to think about where I heard something very similar. And I go all the way back, all the way forward to Paul and Silas when they were beat up and they were arrested and they were whipped and thrown in prison. And I mean, they're in a bad situation. They're going through some rough stuff. Acts 16:25 says, but at midnight, man, at their darkest hour, when the game seemed over, when it was like throwing the white flag, like this is, everything's done. Like there's no more darkest hour. Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened and everyone's chains were loosened. Prayer, response, open, loosen. Prayer, response, opened, loosens. We don't pray to an empty statue. We pray to a God that cares and is listening. Jesus responds to prayer, and there is access and freedom. There is input and output. There is a way out and liberation. He came to set us free. He knows what he's doing. He knows what you need. He knows it better than you know what you need. He knows how to fix the issue. Oh, if we could just trust him. There's a miracle on the other side of the trust, and it's not just half a miracle. He always goes all the way. Had the shackles been loosened and the doors not opened, it really would have done them no good. The doors opened and the shackles were loosened. The ears were opened and the tongue was loosened. It's a package deal. Jesus said, be opened, and his ears were opened and his tongue was loosened. But Jesus did not say, be loosened, yet his tongue was loosened. His tongue being loosened was a direct result of his ears being open, just like he was not able to speak because he was not able to hear. See, if we correct the hearing, then it corrects the speaking part. If we correct the input, then we can correct the output. When the hearing is blocked, we can't hear his instructions. We can't hear his commands. We can't hear his promises. We can't even tell him that, hear him tell us that he loves us. We sit in silence with no action because we have no instruction or direction. Singers, you could come up and help me, and we're going to pray and we're going to worship. And Jesus is like, come here, get close. I want to be clear so that you could be clear. I want to talk to you so I can talk through you. I want to open your ears so you can be my mouthpiece. If you're going to speak for me, you got to hear from me. I got some stuff for you to do, but the internal needs to be clean and clear before the external can be productive and fruitful. The prayer closet needs to be used before I can put you on a platform. I want to open up the lines of communication, but they're busy. Be opened. I'm trying to do some stuff in you and through you, but there's some stuff in the way. Be opened. I'm trying to give you directions, but the road's blocked. Be opened. I want to set you free and set you loose. I want to open up those prison doors and loosen those shackles So we wouldn't be bound anymore by those past memories or past traumas or things that have just been bombarding our minds, keeping us down, that we would literally be set free so that we could live out the freedom that He's won for us. Come here. Let's get in private. Let me take you away from the crowd, away from the craziness, away from all the noise. I want to help you get through this season, show you where to go, what to do, what not to do. I want your output to be successful, so I need your input to be clear. I want you to hear, to understand, so you could live out this incredible, abundant life that I have for you. I don't want you to live in silence any longer. I don't want you to stand at a distance any longer. I don't want you to be apart and alienated and estranged. I don't want you living like a stranger when I've called you a son and a daughter. So come here. Let's get close. Let's get some time together. Let's get in private. Even in a room like this, we could stand. We could close our eyes as we worship. We almost make a little private room for ourselves. But listen, this is not just a Wednesday night thing. This has to be done on the daily. There has to be a moment where we just get alone with God, put some worship music on, whatever you got to do, and just start singing. Sing your own song. And just say, God, I want to hear your voice. I want to hear your instructions. I want to know your will for my life. There's some things happening in my life, and man, there's just been so much blockage for so long, so much hearing damage for so long. I haven't heard you, and be opened.